at the AFM, and I'm assuming generally Dutch citizens don't necessarily know what the AFM is. Generally, international citizens definitely do not know what the AFM is, but I have a feeling that you guys are well aware of our institution. If that is not the case, then please speak up, and then I will clarify what we're doing. But otherwise, I'm going to assume that this is all very familiar to you. So I work at the AFM, specifically where I work at the Expertise Center at the team Consumer Behavior. And as the name already suggests, we're really focusing on behavioral insights of decision making. And so there's a lot of economists, but also behavioral scientists and psychologists in our team. And we are a team of about 12. So we work at the AFM, which is the Financial Conduct Authority of the Netherlands, which really focuses on some more micro issues, where DNB focuses on stability of the system. We're focusing more on the well-being of the participants in the financial markets, so consumers, as you will. Now, most financial institutions, when they have interactions with the AFM, it is not interaction with the Expertise Center per se. So the supervisors, supervision is really a different type of work at the AFM. So my team is located at the Expertise Center. So although we definitely support the supervision, we also do autonomous projects, oftentimes in collaboration with either academic institutions or the financial sector. So we also work together with the financial institutions. And we definitely do provide consultancy to supervision, but we're kind of operating independently. So I've been told that you already know a lot about behavioral insights. It's always hard to know exactly how much. So if I'm very much boring you, also considering the time, please tell me to speed up. And if things are not clear, also please speak up. So just speak up. So there's 4 things that our team is doing. So our goal is to improve consumer financial well-being by applying behavioral science insights. And 4 types of activities we do. So first of all, we identify and understand risks for consumers. And we do that through several ways. So we do a lot of research, but that could be literature review based, but we also use data sets ourselves to analyze. We have access to CBS microdata, which is a very rich data set of all households in the Netherlands, which can help us get a good idea of what financial risk people are facing. We also use survey research, and we use experiments, either in ourselves or we do it together, for example, with an academic institution, or maybe with a financial institution who wants to team up with us. The second thing we do is we encourage financial service companies to use a realistic customer profile when designing their products, when providing information to consumers, and when distributing products. So we call all of this the choice architecture that is offered to consumers. So that's a very important term for us. What we have recently done is we have designed a set of principles that financial institutions could take into account when designing their choice architecture. So we've published that on our website, which is listed below. Third thing we do is provide and support the behavioral science perspective in AFM supervision. So we do that with hands-on on projects, but also by giving them access to a behavioral risk map so that they have a good understanding of what behavioral risks are relevant for them. Lastly, we add the behavioral science perspective to policy in both the Netherlands and Europe. So we try to push for incorporating the behavioral insights to make sound policies. So I think you could really sum up our team as a combination of 3 ideas. The first idea is that behavioral insights matter. So people are not rational. Actually, they're predictably irrational. I don't know if you all know the book Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. Definitely recommend it, but it shows you in all the ways in which we kind of predict people to act against their own self-interest. And we say it matters because it actually has oftentimes big economic implications. A second insight is that choice architecture matters. So how we are presenting decisions to consumers is really going to affect their decision making. And this insight can actually be used as a tool for supervision to help improve consumer welfare, but we'll say a bit more about that. Lastly, methods matter. So we're quite, we really focus on sound methods. So we find it important that causality is established, that effects are accurately identified. So we spend a lot of attention on that as well. But I will talk a bit more about that. And I also have to take into account the time because time is limited. All right. So I guess a lot of you already know the book Nudge. So this kind of is a very new insight for policy and for economists, was that, hey, considering people are responding so much to the choice architecture, you can actually use that for good. You can actually design the choice architecture for consumers in such a way that it improves their welfare. And I say this is a very new insight for economists, but I must say it wasn't a very new insight probably for marketeers who have made a living out of this insight for a long time. Only they have used that insight, maybe not with a consumer welfare goal in mind, but more of a profit maximizing goal in mind. So this idea is not that new, but to use it to improve consumer welfare is actually new. So the nudge is not an end-all cure-all. So although people are affected by the choice architecture, I wouldn't say that that should now be the only tool for policymakers, because there's also definitely place for other interventions, such taxes or other policies or fines and things like that. However, what we can say about the nudges is that it's one of the most cost-effective tools that we have. So there's been a lot of research where different interventions have been compared. And what we see, if we take into account the costs and the debt weight losses that are incurred by different types of policies, we see generally that the nudge outperforms all of them. So this is an example where researchers have investigated the effects of different types of policies to improve retirement savings. And what we see is that a nudge that introduces a deadline to set a contribution rate is by far the most cost-effective method. And this is something that we see quite a bit. All right. So when I say that we are a methods team, what that means is that we focus on causality and also use experiments. We see experiments as the gold standard to establish if an intervention is actually accurate. And I think more and more the private sector, this understanding is coming as well. Firms like Facebook or Booking are using all the time experiments on you. So again, like for profit maximization, it's not a new idea, but for consumer welfare optimization, it is actually a new idea. So another thing that is important is that we focus on actual behavior and not intention. So we want to measure always actual behavior. So there's a lot of research on this. Like, for example, in this situation, non-participants in pension funds received an information session. So in the US, it's a big problem. Savings is not mandatory for pensions, so a lot of people are not saving. And so this is a problem that they try to improve, for example, by sending them to information sessions. So after such an information session, we see that 100% of the people actually claimed that they would enroll in a 401k plan. It's a pension saving plan. So from that perspective, you would think, oh, that's a great success. However, the researchers then followed up and checked who actually was enrolled, and that was only 14%. So not that successful after all. So we really try to push for actual behavior and not intention. So we're kind of a strict team in that sense. So I think the most fun thing to do, so we do a lot of type of work, but I think the most fun thing to discuss is the experiments that we do. At least I like that a lot, of course, considering my background as well. I actually don't have any investment experiments for you enough for right now. It's not because we don't like to do it. I would actually love to do an experiment with a financial institution on choice architecture. It's just that we're not currently doing one. But if one of you is like, oh, well, actually, this is something that I would love to do, then please contact me and we can definitely make that happen. All right, so I have here four on the table. One on pensions, three on consumer credit. I'd be happy to talk on either one of them. So if one of you has a preference for a particular topic, then please shout and I'm going to discuss that. If not, I'm just going to go the conventional way and discuss the first experiment. So in the first experiment, focusing on pension domain, the effect of pre-filling, and there's also some consumer credit experiments.
I think the pension would work well, Alexandra.
Yeah? Perfect. Then I'm gonna go ahead. That's easy. All right. Okay, so this was actually an online experiment that we did recently with about more than 1,500 employees. And we gave them hypothetical choice to either temporarily stop paying pension premiums, so for either 1, 3, or 5 years, they wouldn't have to pay pension premiums, or to temporarily pay extra pension premiums for either 1, 3, or 5 years. So the idea behind that is that increasingly in the Netherlands, we have a very heterogeneous situation where some people are undersaving for their pensions, for example, because they were unemployed for a few years and didn't build up any pensions. But others are maybe actually oversaving because, for example, they have a house that they're paying off and they have very high costs for childcare, for example. So from a consumption smoothing perspective, it might actually be optimal for them to actually go ahead and save a bit less for pensions, right? So there's a heterogeneous situation, and this is the idea that offering this choice to people might improve their welfare. So that's the underlying idea. Now, what we wanted to study is what is the effect of the choice environment, and specifically, what is the effective choice of active choice versus pre-filling options. So that's a feature of the choice architecture. And also see how well people are actually able to make their decisions. And we coupled this with administrative data so that we had an actual idea of people's total pension savings and things like the value of their house and things like that. All right, so first interesting insight, which kind of confirms with what I try to convince you about, is that choice architecture is really important, and the effective order is here also quite important. So if you first ask people, hey, would you like to either stop paying for your pension for either 1, 3, 5 years, and if you don't want that, then maybe you want to pay extra for 1, 3, 5 years, we see that although 59% doesn't want to make any changes, 24% wants to stop. But if you just switch the order of those two decisions and say, okay, well, let me ask you first, do you want to pay extra? Then actually 27% says they want to pay extra. So 24% versus 14, so 10 percentage point difference, and 17 and 27% against 10 percentage point difference, which is quite kind of a big difference for such an important financial decision, just caused by switching the order around. So that's pretty striking, I thought. So next we're going to look at the effect of pre-filling. So apologies for the non-Dutchies because this is Dutch. I don't think it's very important though, because what it basically shows you is how the pre-filling was presented to the employees. So in this case, you see that 3 years premium stop was pre-filled with a bullet, and in the active choice, just none of the bullets would be pre-selected. So that's basically all you need to know. All right. So let's study the effects of pre-filling. So here you see that 0, so no change, was pre-filled. All right. So we did 72% of the employees say, okay, we actually don't want to make any change, as was also suggested by the pre-selected 0%. Now, if we get rid of that pre-selection and just offer them an active choice, then we see that only 59% of the employees actually wants to make no choice. So very big difference again. Now, if we pre-select 3 years, so if we first ask them, okay, would you maybe consider stopping paying for premiums for 3 years, then 26% of the people say, yeah, that's what I want to do. But before, in an active choice situation, that was only 4%. So again, a 22 percentage points difference in a decision that has big financial implications. So we did the same, studying the effects of when we switch the order. So first ask them if they wanted to pay extra premiums, and we say if we pre-select 0, so no choice, no change, then 64% says that's what they want. Whereas if you have an active choice environment, it's 59%. Now, if you pre-select 3 years of paying extra premiums, we see that only 31% is okay to go ahead with that. That's a big difference with the active choice condition, where it was only 10%. So again, more than 20 percentage point difference. So what we see is this switching the choice environment has really big effects on choices and thus on financial implications. Now, what is even more striking, perhaps, is that people don't choose what is optimal. So as I discussed in the beginning, the idea of this providing these options to people is that it could create a lot of welfare for people. If they are oversaving, it would help them to correct themselves. If they're undersaving, it would help them to correct themselves. But that's not what we see in the data. So what we could do is look at the replacement rate. So the amount of money that they could expect when they're at pension age as compared to now. And what you would expect is that if people have a very high replacement rate, so if maybe even more income after their pension age than now, that you would that they would want to have a premium suspension, but that's not what we see. We see no significant difference between people with low replacement rates or high replacement rates on the decision to make a premium suspension. And similarly, with the higher premium decision, there doesn't seem to be a big effect on the replacement rate on the decision to make a higher premium. So it's kind of worrying that people don't identify the right decision for them. So that definitely means that for us, for policymakers who want people to help to identify these situations, that if they want to, they can go ahead and choose that. Is there any questions so far? I cannot see anything, right? So you just have to be brave and speak up.
No questions for me. Thanks.
All right. So, all right. So I believe I have only 5 more minutes. If that's right, I'm going to slowly wrap up. If that's not right, and I have more time, I'm going to try to.
You can go on a bit longer, Alexandra, because we started late.
All right, that's good. Yeah. I guess then I'm just.
I might have a question on the case, if I may. So you say that people don't choose what is optimal. Have you checked whether that has to do with, let's say, a present bias, so that currently people think they don't have enough money to pay extra, or they need money, so they stop their savings?
So that's like present bias is an important feature, especially with pensions, right? That we really overvalue the amount of money that we have right now. But if that was true, I would kind of expect the premium suspension, at least if there's no, I would expect it to be higher, the preference for that, and I would expect still to have a relation between replacement rates. I don't have any reason to believe that people with different replacement rates have different types of present bias. So I'd expect still there to be a significant relation between the two. But I definitely do think that present bias is a big factor in pension savings, because there's a lot of studies that show that. So that's definitely a problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I guess the first, I would like to present to you a study. Like, I think it's super cool. It's not one that we did with the financial institutions, which is maybe a bit less cool, but it was very important for us as a team to do this study. Also because when it kind of went against what the AFM have been doing so far. So it was kind of courageous. Actually, I didn't do that experiment, so I can say it was courageous. I wasn't there yet, but I really like it. So, okay, so there's a lot of research that shows that giving people information doesn't affect their decision-making, doesn't improve their decision-making. Warnings do not improve decision-making. And this is just a very counterintuitive insight. And there's so many research that suggests this, and it's so unbelievable to people. And people keep suggesting giving information as a solution. And yes, this also includes the AFM. And it's just so hard to understand that providing information in many cases, not in all cases, doesn't do anything at all. All right, with this in mind, there is this sign, which is careful, borrowing costs money. And you might have seen it. If you probably have seen it sometimes, mandatory. At the moment, if you're providing credit, it's mandatory warning to show. Now, we were skeptical of this because of all the research that was there. So we did an experiment, and what we did is we brought people to a borrowing online borrowing environment, and half of the visitors were shown this warning and the other half weren't, and then their behavior was compared. And what we found is that people received that warning, visited the same amount of pages as the people who did not receive that warning. If we look at the percentage of people who actually went ahead and borrowed, we see that there was a very small difference, not significant though, but if anything, people who received that warning took up more debt. And then if we look at the amount of money that people took up, again, there was no significant difference. And also the amount of credit applications that were accepted, there was no significant difference. So what did that mean? That means that our randomized control trial found no evidence for an effect of either any type of behavior. So you could say that warning was not effective. And so in 2009, we have tested this warning by asking people, do you remember it? Do you think it's cool? Do you think it works? And yes, people knew it, but people liked it. People thought it worked. So we were very happy and said, okay, this is a very successful warning. That's great. And then we did it. We tested it and we looked at the actual data. We looked at actual behavior and we saw, no, actually, there was no effect. Of course, regulation being slow, it's still mandatory to have this warning. But we as AFM have spoken out and have said, wait a minute, actually, policymakers focus on this because actually warning doesn't really help people make better decisions. And I thought that was courageous because it really changed our view on a particular topic, and that's always a scary thing to do. All right. So I have several more cool experiments, but I'm not going to discuss them because that would just not, we just don't have the time. So I'm just gonna go click to it. What I could do is share the presentation so that you can look at it yourself, or you could visit our websites, and most of the experiments are on there anyway. So if you want to read more about our team, please visit our website, look at the publications. There is Dutch publications, but there's also English publications. We may not always keep them up to date, but we try to. Also, if you want to read more about the AFM more generally, there's the AFM Trend Monitor, which you can also find on our website, which gives you more insights into what we're doing. I know that there's time for questions later, so I'm excited about that. I'm curious about your insights, but for now, this is my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thanks.
Are there any questions to Alexandra from the people attending? I see one clap hands, so that's positive, I think. So that's good. It's no question, but maybe a question from my side. So the geld lenen kost geld doesn't work. Do you have an idea what would work? You're on mute. Yeah.
Apologies. So what we have done, I didn't have time to present it to you, but we have, I'm a strong believer in choice architecture in general. I mean, of course, there's always bigger economic ways to look at a problem, right? When do people need credit? Can you change the circumstances of people? But that's not within our realm of control. So that's not the answer I'm going to give you. I've give you the answer where I can actually do something about. So what we have done is we have looked at the choice architecture of consumer credit providers, and we have changed them slightly. For example, giving a higher default interest rate, so that so that meant that people paid back quicker, so that the total costs went down. So that's something we've done. We have also rephrased the conditions of a loan, for example, by focusing on the total cost of the loan, which resulted in fewer applications, but also in paying off the debt sooner. So that's things we have done. So that means that either people will not take out credit, or they will take out a better credit that's less costly to them. So I think that's an important way to go about is look at the choice architecture.
I was just wondering, would it be possible same effect if we approach it the way like we approach for the smokers? So if you say on the pack, you said smoking is killing, and they don't realize it, but on the other side, you show the lung and your teeth and your tongue and the throat, it might be working. Maybe this can be implemented to show them what can be collateralized behind the lung.
I haven't seen any research that suggests that works. Also, providing calorie information doesn't work. Now, it's not always true that providing information doesn't work. Like if I learn that, I don't know, there's like the chicken has a lot of dioxin, I should probably die from eating it, that particular chicken, I probably wouldn't eat it, right? So that's new information to me, and it will definitely change my decision making. But if it's information that you kind of already know, I haven't seen evidence where that changes people's decision making, and it's just so hard to believe, and I still don't believe it. And I sometimes suggest maybe we should inform people better, make the information more transparent, present it in a prettier format, but it doesn't really do anything. So I doubt that pictures of people without money would help with taking out consumer credit. But maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I haven't tested it, so I should test it first. But I don't predict it to be the case.
Okay, thank you.
How do you decide on which topics you want to investigate?
So if there is if supervision has a specific problem, we're always happy to work on that. If we think it's an important problem, and also sometimes we identify ourselves like, oh my gosh, this seems to be really something where there's a lot of room for improvement, right? Or this is a big problem for consumers, and then we try to work on the most important problems. And sometimes it's also different. Sometimes we don't really know a lot about a particular topic. We don't even know if it's a behavioral problem. So sometimes we just try to find out more about the problem before we suggest the solution. Because we now have a lot of data, so we can figure out quite a bit. And it's oftentimes better to first do that boring analysis before you kind of suggest solutions. So we try to be careful with that as well.
So you're free to pick and choose the topics that you want to investigate.
I mean, I'm for me, I'm free enough, but of course, I mean, it should still be relevant and impactful. And there's definitely people who can have a say about it. But generally, if we identify something that is important and we can convince people, then yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
I think we need to leave it here. We'll definitely share Alexandra's presentation. And I think we also all heard that you are looking for a company, a firm, investment firm, a bank that you can do experiments in investments with. If there is, well, definitely people can contact you through through the AFM.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much. And we'll definitely share the presentation. Thanks also for the questions to Alexandra. And now we're moving to the soft skill part of this session. We'll have Chris Lemke doing a interactive workshop on influencing skills. And over the last year, we found out that you can very well do an interactive sessions also online. Chris has done on a monthly basis a soft skills session for us, and that were always very well received and very interactive. So today will be on influencing, and I know you all working as some sort of capacity of risk manager. It's sometimes difficult to have really an impact on the organization because businesses normally take the decisions. Your impact has to also always go through influencing, and Chris will focus on different influencing styles, how to get your way basically. And I know Chris is very is very good at introducing himself, so I'll gladly leave that to him.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marianne. Really interesting to listen to Alexandra, and I'll be able to pick up maybe some of these points. What we'll look at is simply our ability to influence other people. And what we heard from Alexandra is information doesn't always help, okay, to change people's minds. Let's look at other ways of changing people's mind, influencing their decisions. And that always involves information in some shape or form, but we can present that information in different ways. And that's what we're looking at here. So, 4 objectives for this before I'll introduce myself. So we're looking at different influencing styles here. I want this to be really practical for you to basically walk away and be able to do something with it. You'll be able to identify your own preferred style. I have a guess which one it is, but I'm not telling. We want you to be able to more easily switch to a different style. And think of this as different instruments. You'll have your favorite instrument, but we want you to be able to play a little bit of piano when that's called for, even if your favorite one is the electric guitar. And then finally, why do we do all this in the first place? It's with Alexandra's insights that she shared about certain ways of presenting and the power of the default, the power of pre-filling. Similarly, with this part, we want to just have you increase your hit rate. It's always a question of probability of influencing other people. There's no guarantees. There's no surefire recipes, but we can certainly increase our chances of doing this right. And I think all of you are in a professional role where a lot depends on your ability to influence others. My own background, I've worked in different organizations, always around the topic of learning and training. Lately, I'm involved a lot with different CFA societies around the world, including the CFA VBA Society Netherlands. We've done a number of sessions together around soft skills or career skills. I'm convinced personally that the hard stuff is the easy stuff and the soft stuff is the hard stuff. What I mean by that is you are or you're fast becoming experts in your fields. And what you'll notice more and more is that being right and knowing your facts is not enough. It's not going to get you there. Your career and your success and your impact inside your organization and elsewhere will depend on your ability to get the communication right. And one aspect of that we're looking at today is the influencing skills. And I just want to link back to something that Alexandra said. She was basically recommending the Nudge book by Thaler. Strong recommendation there. It's marvelous. There's lots of really, really surprising insights in there. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, either get the book or just find one of the YouTube book summaries, at least, of the Nudge book. There's so much in there. And it's actually nicely the overlap between the insights that Alexandra shared and what I have to share with you around influencing styles. So moving in there, influencing skills. So I'm going to ask you something. This is a session with how many people online now? What is it? 30, 35? What do we have? So wouldn't it be awesome if you all, at least for a quick hello, switch on your camera and we establish a bit of human contact here in this remote digital world so that we're literally seeing each other. And my legal friends tell me I have to put a disclaimer, unless you are in your pajamas, right? But otherwise, anything goes. I don't care about your background. I don't care if you have kids or pets or hamsters running around in the background. We've seen it all by now, okay? So just a quick camera on, a quick wave at your fellow human beings, and a bit of human connection. I have a second screen, so I'm going to keep this up on my primary screen so I get some visual feedback, and you can shake your head, or you can nod, or you can smile, or you can do other signs depending on what points I'm making, and that helps me just stay a little bit in tune with you, right? So think of it as you helping us, making this more interesting. So here's my definition of influencing. influencing is getting other people to want to change their behavior in a way that they wouldn't have done without your intervention. And that's key, because influencing is not about forcing other people to do something. Influencing is not about, bribing them to do something. It's about getting them to want to change their behavior. So it's their decision. And Alexandra was talking about how difficult that is, because you can give them all the facts and they still take the wrong decision, right? How annoying. So my scenario here is that in your professional role, a lot of times you'll have a very clear idea about what you want to do or what the organization should do, but you don't have the power to just say, here's what we'll do. You sort of depend on somebody else or a group of people, and you need to literally talk them into it. You need to sell this to them, right? So influencing is a way of selling your ideas, with the effect that afterwards they sort of think about it and they say, okay, yeah, maybe she is right, and that's what we'll do, right? That's what we're aiming for. So influencing, when we have more time, which we don't have today. So I'm on a very tight schedule by Anne-Marie. I have like 37 minutes left here, which is why I'm talking so fast. Thanks everybody for keeping your camera on. That's lovely. And I'll ask you a chat question in a second. So get ready to just share a little something with us in the chat in about 30 seconds. So influencing is what we're talking about. You influencing other people. There's an overlap with these 4 other things. And I just want to put that out. If we had more time, we would go into this and sort of share and compare about where we see the differences. For today's purpose, to move this along swiftly and to get you to play the 4 different instruments, I'll just talk you through this basically. So influencing is related to negotiating, because in a negotiation, we are influencing each other. We're trying to influence each other, but the outcome is some sort of deal, hopefully. So it's kind of a special case of mutual influencing with the goal of achieving a deal, a contract in the outcome. Manipulating. Well, if this session was called, professional manipulation, I'm not sure if everybody would have showed up, or you would have been sort of ashamed to show up, or you would have logged in under a different name, maybe out of curiosity. But there's something not quite right with this word manipulation, right? If I say, well, you should talk to Gabi, she's a world-class influencer. She's really good at influencing. That's a compliment. If I say, talk to Elko, he's a really good manipulator, somehow that doesn't sound so good, right? So it's not a recommendation. We want to influence, we don't want to manipulate. Why? Because manipulation is sneaky. Manipulation is sort of undercover, covert operation, and manipulation usually is against my best interest. If you're manipulating me, it means you're tricking me into doing something that is really against my best interest, okay? So like with other things, you can use your influencing techniques in order to manipulate somebody. Just like you can use a kitchen knife to slice a tomato or attack another human being, right? So careful with these weapons that we're handling here today. My third one is forcing, and forcing doesn't count because that's just with the power. That's just saying, here's what I want you to do, go do it because I'm the boss, or I have these officer stripes here, or because you're my child or something. So that doesn't count here. We're not counting that as a skillful way of influencing. And the last one is marketing. Well, actually, the downside with forcing is the minute you look away, the impact is gone, right? So it's not sustainable necessarily. And the last one is marketing. Marketing is also a field where influencing is used a lot, but it's usually targeting a broad group. Whereas in my influencing scenarios, I'm thinking one-to-one or one towards a small committee. So it's a much more tailored thing. And in marketing, we're usually selling something, and influencing, there's no commercial interest the way that I'm looking at it. Okay, so that's just to put this in context. And where we need to be really careful is, I could ask you now, what's your advice if I wanted to influence you? What should I do and what should I not do if I wanted to influence you? And you would all be able to come up with a number of things. And some people would say, okay, just be, transparent, be open about it. Don't try to be sneaky and too indirect, because I don't like that, so straight up, establish a relationship, whatever. And some people would say, be careful when you're trying to influence me. Invest in the trust first and get that right, and then you can come with your goal. Somebody else will say, just give me the facts, never mind the relationship thing, just give me the data. I'm a data person, and then let me decide. Don't put any pressure on me. So you all have different preferences and could basically write up a recipe on how I should influence you. Now, my bet is that you use exactly those ways to influence other people, which means you will do unto others in influencing the way that you would want me to do unto you. If you're a fact person and you're best influenced by me giving you the facts and then getting out of the way and giving you some time to digest and make up your mind, then that's exactly what you will tend to do with other people, right? If you're somebody who says, Chris, in order to influence me, you need to establish some sort of relationship, don't tell me to switch on the camera during the first 5 minutes. We don't know each other. I'm not taking orders from you. My camera stays off. You need to sort of build the relationship first. And then when I know you a little bit, you can ask me again, like 10 minutes into the session and say, come on, switch on your cameras. It'll be really nice to see everybody on the screen here. And it's completely voluntary, no pressure. So again, the way that you prefer to be influenced is going to be the way that you influence other people. And the bad news is that doesn't always work because other people are not like you. So the fundamental shift I want you to make is to acknowledge, okay, this is what you like, this is what you prefer, but other people may be different. So what we need to do is we need to influence them the way that they want to be influenced, right? And what I'll introduce to you is four different styles, quickly, 4 different ways of playing your influencing instrument, so that you can switch from one to the other, and you can sort of make up your mind before and say, okay, which in this situation with this group, what's the pitch I'm going to use? How will I approach this? And then you observe and see how it works. Alexandra was talking about experiments, right? Running an experiment on credit warnings or on pension decisions. That's what you should be doing all the time in your professional setting. See it as an experiment. I'm trying to influence this group. Here's the approach I'll use. And then keep your eyes open and see how they react, so that if it's not working, you don't double down and try the same thing a bit harder, but you actually switch mode, you shift gears, switch to something else. So strongly recommending a situational approach. All right, here we go. I have 4 different styles that I want to describe to you, and we'll look at a concrete example for each of these in the 31 minutes that we have left. But before we go there, if you found the chat function, can you tell me on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 meaning completely lousy, not good at this at all, and 10 meaning world class, champion, awesome, how good are you at influencing other people? I'm just trying to get a picture here for my own benefit, but also for you as a group to see where the other people in the call are. So there's a chat function. Just put in a number, 0 meaning lousy, 10 meaning you should be teaching this class. And that'll give us a bit of an idea of where people are. I'm opening the chat here on my end, so I see some of the numbers coming in. I see a 5, a 3, a 6, a 6, a 3, a 4, a 7, a 5, a 7, a 6. If somebody's really quick, you can calculate the average. We're not using a voting tool here because for this short session, we felt it would be more of a distraction. So I'm getting a lot of values there between 5 and 7, basically, in a first quick look. What should our goal be? Our goal should be to move the needle by at least 1.5, if not 2, during the remaining 30 minutes. Okay, that's the goal. We will get better at this because we'll cover some really useful theory, and as my political science professor used to say at university, there's nothing more practical than a good theory. So here's the theory. Simple matrix, a 4x4. We have high energy styles and we have low energy styles of influencing, and we have push styles and we have pull styles. So I'll take you through this matrix of 4 different styles. We look at them one by one and try them out with an example. We'll start with persuading, and persuading is a push style. I'm coming at you from my view of the world, and it's a head style. Head meaning low energy. high intellect, low energy, low emotion, if you like. And so this style, illustrated by these two gentlemen in lab coats, and yes, they're both male, but we could argue that maybe this is a male style. I'm not sure. This session is not about gender, but it's an interesting dimension to think about. Anyway, this is the typical professional sort of scientist style, also used widely in the financial world where we use data. You know, when I was working at Goodyear, they had in every meeting room a big sign that said decisions based on facts. Okay, decisions based on facts is the slogan basically for the persuading style. And it's my facts against your facts, my data against your data. And then we interpret and we analyze and we see who wins. And this is all very rational. And we say, here's the thing, we've done the analysis, here's the data, 57% say this, 12% increase lately, da, da, da. And then based on all that, I'm saying, so here's what we should do, okay? And all of this is done in a matter-of-fact style. This is the typical business style that all of us are familiar with. It's sort of the default expected style in professional organizations. It's the one that most of us are most comfortable with. And it's fine. It's okay. Except, let me say this, for a lot of decisions, it doesn't really work that well because a lot of decisions, there's no clear picture and the data doesn't tell a clear story. And it's more about preferences or it's more about risk. We're talking about risk management. So if we're talking about risk, a lot of times I think the data and the facts are sort of limited use. And the other thing that is sort of dangerous about this, it's pretending to be so factual and uninterested. So this is not about me or you. This is just about, here's the data, here's what it indicates, da, da, da. And still there's a lot of ego invested in this because very often the implication is, here's the data, here's my analysis, and any intelligent person will agree with me, okay? Do you hear the arrogance in that? Do you hear the potential for serious fights in that? Because then we have somebody else getting up and saying, well, I also looked at the data and here's how I see it. And also I read a study recently, and they also have very good facts and very good data. And then all of a sudden it is you against me. And that's when we get in trouble. We get in trouble every time when the question is not really what's the better analysis, but the question becomes who's the smartest person in the room? Okay, are you dumb or am I dumb? And we need to then quickly regroup and try a different angle. You don't see a lot of gestures with this. Typically, the gesture that you see is this, different reasons. And the persuading style typically is done by either inductive, listing the facts. This is the pop, here's the 3 data points. And so therefore, then comes the recommendation. Or it's served the other way around by saying, well, we should clearly go for a massive marketing campaign on this, and we should use these posters here because, and then comes 1, 2, 3. You can do it either way. It doesn't change anything. It's still persuading. You're still pretending this is a rational, logical sort of thing, which again, I would claim a lot of times if we're talking about risk management, it isn't necessarily really the full picture, right? So giving an example for this, if you want to influence your friend to invest in their soft skills or career skills, I said earlier, the soft stuff is the hard stuff, right? So invest in that. How would you do that using the persuading style? Just think about that. We don't really have time to role play this out. If you want to play, again, use the chat and think about how would you phrase that. It could be 2 sentences saying you should really invest in your soft skills because pop, 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 and then using just the persuading style, the way that we've described it, coming with facts. Just invent some statistics for our purpose here, not in real life. I'm not saying in real life you should invest your statistics. I'm saying for our little use case here in the session, you can come up with a convincing data point. And then we can see how that would go, right? So this would be a typical application of the persuasion style. I'll just look quickly at the chat, see if something's there. Again, we'll keep the chat open, and you can just share your examples there. Stress the big importance of soft skills in the 20. Yes, argue with the job market. To become a top player. Yeah, that's with the top player. I would be expecting some data around that, saying that a recent study showed that 3 out of 4 top players have outstanding soft skills, something like that. Again, give me the data. The studies show, yes, exactly. Give me 3 reasons why you should not improve. That's interesting that you're asking them to come up with the counter case. That's almost a jujitsu that you're doing there. I like that. Okay. Skills of persuasion, we're not going in there. Assertion is the second stop. Sorry, was there a comment or a reaction? No, we're good. Okay. Asserting is the second one. So we've done the persuasion. That's the expected thing. That's the professional with the reasons, with the logic. Everybody comfortable with that. Asserting is very different. And a lot of us are not comfortable with that because we feel that not the right style, especially not in a professional setting, but maybe not even elsewhere. So the asserting is also a push style. I'm also coming from my view of the world, but it's a high energy style. And I'm basically saying, here's what I want you to do. And that's why I picked this beautiful picture. You've seen it 1,000 times, but it illustrates perfectly. This is the person with authority saying, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I need you to do. And sometimes they have officer stripes. Sometimes they're just really big. So it's a tough, confronting style. It's direct. It's saying, I want. It's not saying because. The moment you say because, you're moving away from assertive. The assertive doesn't use because. The assertive says, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I need you to do now. It's very direct, very demanding. There's a high expectation there. The nonverbal needs to fit with it, right? I cannot be assertive and do that sort of in a low voice and a bit careful and say, well, I want you to move your car now, if you don't mind. That's not assertive. That's asking friendly, and that's fine. Maybe that's exactly what you want to do. But if you want to be assertive, both feet on the ground, take a deep breath, take some room, straighten up, loud voice, and then you bring that across. You need to show that you're serious, okay? And that only works if you're convinced that you're right. So before you start using the asserting style, check in your mind if you're really right, if you're entitled to demand whatever you want to demand. But if you convince yourself that this is really important and it's sort of urgent that they do what I say, then there's nothing wrong with using the assertive style. Some of us are uncomfortable with this, but here's an example where it's going to be very clear to you that you want to be using the asserting style and not the persuading style, because there's sort of an urgency. I put in asserting in the chat, and now you can again use this to play around. You see a father on the sidewalk and their kid is playing close to the curb and they're on their cell phone. So there's traffic. They need to take their kid off the street now. So again, in order to play with this, in order for you to remember this, don't say I would talk about or I would mention the risk. No, put in word by word phrase what you would actually say to me if I'm that father. Something around, get your kid off the street now. You use your own words, but you understand how this is very different from going up there and saying, well, I've read an article recently and it was mentioning that the second most frequent cause of death for children. We don't have time for this, right? So get your kid off the street now. That's asserting. And it can be absolutely in the other person's interest. That's why I picked this example. It's not about me telling you what to do because I'm big and a bully. No, it can be absolutely in your interest that I'm doing this. Third one, attracting. The attracting style. And this is your Martin Luther King. If you haven't listened to that speech in a while, listen to it again. It's awesome. It's one of the probably 2 or 3 greatest speeches of all times. And we've all heard it before, but we've heard it a while back maybe, or even in school. So it's worth listening to again. And what he does is he paints you the picture. He doesn't say, you know, there's a lot of injustice in America and poor people, 60% of them are colored and the statistics. So he's not making that argument. He's saying, I have a dream, and my dream is that my kids will grow up in a country that doesn't judge them based on their color, but judges them based on their character, on their behavior. And isn't that the country that you want to live in? So there's no rational argument here. And he's not saying, you know, I demand that you, no, it's not persuading, it's not with the data, it's not asserting. It's saying, wouldn't it be awesome? Okay. And that's the one, by the way, that I used at the beginning when I asked, hey, how about switching on your cameras? Because I don't have statistics on how people are more engaged when they have their camera on. I'm sure they are. I'm sure you are more engaged. I'm sure we have a better conversation when we're seeing each other. I'm sure a lot of nonverbal comes across. I'm not using all that data and all these arguments. I'm also in no position to tell you that, you know, in order for me to run the session, I want you to switch on your camera now. That would be probably one of the worst ways to start a session, right? Because with one click, you're out of here. If you don't like what I'm saying, if I break the bond in a way, you'll go elsewhere. So looking at my options, I felt that my best bet here is to just say, wouldn't it be awesome if we had everybody switch on their camera? And that's the only argument I have. It's just painting you the picture that, hey, we see each other, we feel a bit of a human connection in a time where we're still really restricted. So, and that's what you do here. So it's a pull style. You're saying, why don't you come over here? And it is high emotion. You're putting your personality in there, right? Which also in a way means it's high risk. If I just say, here's the data and here's, I think, what we should be doing, guess what? You're still responsible then of doing your own analysis and you take the decision. So if in the end it turns out wrong, I was just, you know, presenting the facts. We draw our conclusion together. We're jointly responsible. If I'm using asserting, I'm fully responsible because I'm telling you, do this. Sometimes I even say, trust me on this. You know, we don't have time to argue. I'm the expert. So do this. You go over here, you go over there. You better be right when you're doing that because other people will remember that you said, trust me on this. And then it turned out to be a catastrophe. Similar with the I have a dream thing. You better be reasonably sure that this is a good idea because you're basically asking people to trust you and come over here, take a leap of faith. So the example I have for you where this is a perfect fit, this style, and I'm just looking at, yeah. Hey, good. So some good ones and very short ones there on the asserting. Watch out, cars are overrunning your kids. Yeah. Save your kids before it's too late. Exactly. Now, the now, it's imminent. And there's no, what I like is in your examples, there's no data in there. There's no convincing. I'm not appealing to your reason. I'm just saying, hey, don't be stupid, you know, get your kids off the road. Let's look at the attracting one. I put that in the chat. Attracting. I wanted to make that in bold. Here we go. So attracting. If you're planning a family Sunday and you want to do something together and you think it would be awesome to go for a long walk in the woods Again, why is this a good one for attracting? It's a good one because there's probably 7 other things you could be doing with the family that would be just as fun or could be just as fun. Do I have a rational argument why a walk in the woods is the best option? Yeah, we'll get the, you know, fresh air is good for us and blah, blah, blah. But there's other stuff that's good for us. There's other options. So this is really a question of preference. I don't think I'm in a position to tell the others that, by the way, I'm informing you, we'll all go on a walk together on Sunday. In my family, that doesn't work. So I think my best bet is going to be to say, hey, wouldn't it be awesome Sunday when we're all here, the 4 of us together, right after breakfast, if we go out, take a walk in the woods, you know, the little 90-minute, 2-hour tour that we haven't done in a while, will be fresh air. We all move a little. We can talk. It's informal. Haven't done that in a while. I can just see that. So attracting is about painting the picture. Use some colors, describe the sounds, let them transport them in their imagination to that place where you want to be. Now, you can also use that if you're talking about risk. And when you're talking about risk, then maybe you don't say, wouldn't it be great? But you would say, wouldn't it be a complete disaster if we sit here today and decide that we'll take this risk, everything's going to be fine. And then just imagine us sitting here 3 months from now with an article in the newspaper reporting how this has gone wrong and how people have, you know, we've been sued. I don't want to be in that position. Can you imagine being in that position, having to? So you can paint a dark picture. The style is still called attracting. In that case, you don't say, I have a dream. You say, I have a nightmare. And if we do this, I can, you know, I can't tell you the probability, but I think there is a risk that this will be the situation we find ourselves in. And again, if you may need to practice that a little bit. You may need to practice your storytelling skills in order to do that. I think in a number of situations, this is going to be a better bet than the logical percentage data-driven approach. Okay, because if there's a 7% risk, I'm willing to take that. If you say, well, we're trying to calculate the risk here, but let's just look at the potential damage that could come from this decision. Let me play that out for you. We could have, and then you describe, you paint the picture. And that goes back to what Alexandra was saying, information doesn't necessarily change people's minds, but if we frame it properly, it changes their minds. And framing is, am I talking about a potential gain or am I talking about a potential loss? And that goes back to Kahneman and Thaler, that in terms of trying to get people to take smart decisions, we need to talk clearly about the risks and the downside. And that's a stronger motivator than the upside. If we say, you can, you know, we can easily make another 20,000 by doing this, is different from saying, we're actually throwing 20,000 out the window by not doing this. Different frames, same statement, just a different frame. So good, thanks for your suggestions around attracting. Wouldn't it be great to have a walk so we can catch up and a lunch afterwards? Okay, somebody's throwing in some ice cream. Love it. Really good. Yeah, this is about what do you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, right? Make it a compelling picture after many COVID walks. Okay, you're saying you've been there, done that. I get that. Healthy walk in the sun. Yeah, bring the colors in, the weather. Don't promise anything in terms of the weather, but we're just saying, wouldn't it be great? Okay, we have one left, and this is the most tricky one. This is called bridging. And bridging is a pull style, saying, come over here. You're trying to look at things from the other person's point of view. And it's low energy. It's not painting the picture and being, you know, high energy. It's very sober. And it's actually trying to explore with the other person the options. That's why the picture I'm using is that of a doctor saying, well, have you tried this? Have you thought about that? Why not try to get some exercise in over the week? Whatever. It's a very open conversation. I'm trying to explore together with you. Now, I had an issue with this style when I first heard about it, because I felt that this is sneaky. You know, you use the persuading style, which is you're making a strong argument, rational, and I can follow or I don't. You use the asserting style, which is you saying, here's what I want you to do. Okay, and then that's clear and straightforward. I can then decide if I follow or not. You use the attracting style, you paint the picture, it's all cool. But using the bridging style, where you basically pretend to be asking, oh, Chris, what do you think next Sunday? What do you think we could be doing? Any ideas? That's sneaky, and you're actually manipulating me if in the end you know that the outcome you want to get is us taking a walk together, right? That's against my sort of ethical framework of influencing. But in a way, that's exactly what you do. You use an open, warm, sincere tone. You explore, you ask questions. You use open gestures. You have good eye contact. It's a coaching conversation, okay? You act like a coach. And the trick is, this is only a decent influencing style if you're actually fairly open to the outcome and to the decision that the other person takes, as long as they do something. So it's a great style if somebody's not doing anything with their money, for example, they're just sitting on it and have it in an account, and you want to get them to invest it in a more profitable way, okay? And the bridging style would be to ask that person, well, okay, so let's think about what could you be doing with that money that would be a little bit more profitable and you would still feel safe about it. So first of all, what makes you keep it in that cash account? Oh, you want the flexibility. Okay. So, but what would be other, maybe if we find something else that is equally flexible, would you be open to that? And then I'm actually not leading you to a particular product. I just want you to come up with something better than exposing yourself to inflation with your cash in a bank account. Okay, and the same way with my Sunday walk. I cannot use bridging if I know that I want us to take a walk. I can use one of the other three styles. If I'm actually perfectly open to different activities and all that's important for me is for us to do something together as a family, then I can use bridging. And I can start that conversation by saying, I was thinking it would be really nice if we do something together next Sunday. Does anybody have any bright ideas? Anything that we haven't done in a while that you would love doing? Okay, and I'm facilitating the conversation, and I'm getting input from different people to move to some sort of action as an outcome. And that's what bridging does. And bridging is your most powerful one if you want the other person to have ownership of the decision in the end. It's one where the other person is fully in charge, and it can work really, really well that way. So the example I have is that you have an unemployed friend whose day-night rhythm is a bit out of whack, so they stay up all night and then sleep until noon. And you feel that it would be really good for them to go back to a more regular daily rhythm. And then bridging is a dialogue. So we can only play the start of that, if you like, in the chat. How would you start that conversation to make it a bridging conversation? And again, we could take the same case and think about persuading. How do we do that? You know, studies have shown that people who get their day-night rhythm mixed up have sort of 30% less energy, and that's the persuading. We can try to tell them what to do. Might work under certain circumstances. We can do the wouldn't it be great? But here we're trying the bridging, which is a coaching approach, because we want them to own the solution. We're not telling them what to do. We're not saying, here's what I think you should do. we're saying, is there any way you think you could get more that would help you get back to a more normal rhythm? And then we try to get them to come up with a solution. So it's asking a lot of questions typically. And it's hard to do in a chat thing because you can just do the opening. It's like a chess game. You do the opening, and then the other it's their turn. They need to react, right? And it might be as simple as asking them, so how are you doing lately? How do you feel about the way you're using your time? And let them say that, it actually sucks. It's like, I feel like my university days, only that I have no lectures. And then you can slowly go into your coaching mode, right? So that's the 4 instruments. I'll leave the chat open. Where's your current lifestyle taking you? Okay. Open questions. I would recommend open questions. So rather than yes, no questions, do you think is a closed question. I can answer with yes or no. And I might get defensive. But if you ask me, how do you feel about the way you're currently spending your time? Yeah, you'll get more out of me. So that's the 4 styles that we have. Now, final point. I was talking about a situational approach. I think what's always useful if you're trying to influence other people is establish your credibility in some way. There needs to be some trust. You need to signal attention, tune into me, eye contact, that kind of thing. Don't try to influence me on the side. Respect for the other person is important, and empathy. So that spells care. I like that. So those to me are really universal ingredients. Whenever you're trying to influence somebody else, think about those 4 and see if you can sort of tick the box. Do I have credibility here? If not, how can I establish my credibility? Am I signaling attention to them? Am I showing respect? Am I leveraging my empathy here? And that's really, really useful. Now, here's a free bonus tip. You have these 4 instruments now, okay? And you can play the 4 instruments in different situations. By the way, another use case for the asserting one is if you have somebody who's suffering from depression in your family or in your circle of friends, and they're sitting around and they're not doing anything. Don't try to persuade them and use data arguments why they should go out with you. Be asserting and say, look, put on your coat, we're going out today, right? Big smile, really friendly, but asserting. You can spend an hour with me discussing, and I'll come up with all sorts of good reasons why it's actually much better to stay at home today because I'm depressed anyway. So that's a good use case for just being asserting and really clear that I know what's good for you, even if you don't know what's good for you, and they'll thank you later, hopefully. Here's another free tip: allow the other person to influence you. So if you're in a relationship, and most influencing happens in a relationship, use any opportunity to signal to me that you are taking my advice on something. And then next time when you try to influence me, I'll be a lot more open because you've already proven that we are in a relationship where we listen to each other, right? If you defend yourself against every attempt I make to influence you, I'm going to do the same. So think about that. If you want to prepare the next situation where you want to influence the other person, then start by grabbing any opportunity you get to allow them to influence you. And now I'm finishing up with just basically bonus points, and these are ideas for you to go further. We've talked about the four different styles. There's also the 4 horsemen. As I said, most influencing happens in a relationship. And it can be a relationship with your boss. It can be a relationship with your colleagues. They know you. It's not like you're meeting in the street, right? So check some things around the relationship. And there's somebody who did good research into how relationships work and how relationships break down. And it's a guy called Gottman at the Gottman Institute. And he says, if we're criticizing and attacking each other with sort of broadside attacks, then there's something seriously wrong with the relationship, and I won't be open to your influencing. So if you criticize me broadly in public and say that I'm, a loser and an unacceptable person, and then half an hour later you come with some bright idea about something I should be doing, forget it. I'm not listening, right? And this is so obvious, but we forget it sometimes, especially with our teenage children. We wonder why they are so resistant to our influence. Well, here's some of the reasons. Defensiveness and blocking. Often in relationships, we're really defensive. We get a piece of feedback and we say, it's not my fault because you did this. So immediately push back to the other side, to the other person. Contempt and sarcasm. I'm still really proud of having found this picture. I searched for a long time. But if we have contempt or sarcasm in our relationship, we won't be influencing each other constructively, right? And it may be me that's being sarcastic, and then I need to stop that, because I cannot be sarcastic at 1:30 and then try to influence you at 1:45. It's not going to work. And my last one is this one here, stonewalling, ignoring. A lot of times we pretend that we didn't hear that, and the other person will just shout louder, obviously. And if that's going on also, never mind, tuning your influencing skills in those situations. That's not the problem. The problem is not that you're playing your piano well and not well enough. The problem is that the other person has earplugs in because you're in that kind of relationship. So what I'm saying is, check the relationship. Maybe it's not your influencing skills why the other person is not doing what you're recommending. Maybe there's something else. And then, just as a recommendation, I would suggest you look at this piece here, which is by Mr. Cialdini, and he's looking specifically at commercial influencing, selling techniques, and 6 specific ones that he says salespeople use, marketing uses. Some really good, strong research behind that, crazy examples. And so you want to be ready for these techniques. One is reciprocity. I do you a small favor, and then you're sort of obliged to do me a favor in return. So these are strategic favors. And what you need to do is when somebody's making these strategic favors, take the favor, but don't feel obliged. It's their sales technique, right? The other way around, you can think about what's something that you can do for the other person that will make them feel sort of obliged to help you out with your need. Scarcity. This is the typical, offer lasts until midnight kind of thing, where the healthy response is to say, so what? It's a completely false sense of urgency, right? Because typically the offer comes around again in about 4 weeks. But creating some sort of scarcity can be a powerful tool to get people to take a decision. Authority, getting a famous actor to praise your coffee machine seems to work marvelously well, even though he knows as much about coffee machines as you or I do. Consistency is a nice one. I get you to agree with me in principle that theater and concerts and the Philharmony are great things in our lives and deserve to be supported. And then I pull a little form out of my pocket where I say, well, sign here, to support the local Philharmony. And because you've said yes to the principle, then you'll also go along with me. The liking thing, get other people to like you, improves your chance of influencing them tremendously. And then, of course, the consensus thing around what others are doing, what the general public has adopted, etc. And that's also a really strong one. So I'm not doing this justice by summarizing it in 2 minutes. I basically just wanted to point out to it the Cialdini research is really, really strong and gives you some nice ideas about techniques that you A, may want to use, or B, want to be prepared for or prepared against. And that's the end of my slide deck with basically 3 minutes left in the session. So I stop sharing and give the microphone back to our host.
Maybe there are 1 or 2 questions still unanswered that someone wants to speak up, or raise it again in the chat. It's no, it's quiet. That's good. There's good feedback in the chat. Yeah, I think we all picked up some tips and tricks. I hope the audience did as well. We're going to continue with the sessions of Chris after the holidays. So if you want to attend, please watch our events calendar. And we'll probably also going back to live events after the summertime. Also looking very much forward to that. Yes, I see some hands. But I think we'll go for a combination of webinars as well as live events. So I think sometimes content is very good to do it online, and sometimes it's much better to meet in person. But I think Chris has proven that online soft skills can be very effective. So I would like to thank you all for attending. We'll send the presentations around tomorrow morning. And yeah, hope to see you soon, online or offline. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.